They called it justice. 5 platforms rose from the marbled floor of the Galactic High Court, suspended high above a congregation of 1,000 species. The arena was crystalline, echoing with mechanical murmurs, lens flashes, and the distant hum of hover recorders. In the center, beneath light domes that bathed everything in holy white, 5 women stood in simple gray linen robes. No weapons, no armor, just mothers, nurses, engineers, daughters. Their crimes? Organizing a civilian colony on Varellan. 6 without submitting genetic compliance reports to the Core Council. Worse, they'd refused corrective hormonal adjustments. The court called it seditious breeding. They are symbols, boomed the Grand Herald of the court, a feathered creature with gold-plated talons. Let their silence teach obedience. No tears were shed by the gathered delegates. A few sipped nectar or fiddled with translation bands. One Plorthian senator blinked 6 times, then leaned over to say, "Humans do love drama." Each woman had a steel collar fitted, the kind designed not just to kill, but to broadcast neural disintegration live across the network. Earth's media channels had been invited. They declined. Silence had followed. Not even a diplomatic objection. One of the women, tall, dark-haired, 40 at most, lifted her chin toward the broadcast drones. Her lips moved, though no sound came through. Later, when decoded, it was found she had whispered, "We were not the first, but let us be the last." The moment her collar activated, the sky changed. It wasn't immediate, not explosive, just colder, not a temperature drop, but a stillness in how the court's ceremonial banners fluttered. How the alien dignitaries, ever fidgeting, stopped all at once, as if they sensed something ancestral shift behind their skulls, as if some unseen predator had looked back through the feed. On Earth, millions watched with eyes dry, fists clenched. No protests, no panic, just a pause. And then came the memo. We acknowledge receipt of judgment. Humanity requires no further clarification at this time. That was it. In the days that followed, spaceport lounges in Earth systems emptied. Diplomatic gatherings went unattended. Trade shipments were refused entry for quarantine compliance. Satellites pivoted subtly, drifting 5 degrees off standard. The Galactic King laughed. Mortals and their mourning, he chuckled at a court feast, flanked by slave dancers and meat-stuffed chalices. Let them cry into their dirt. And then came Silas Gray. He arrived late. The ambassador's ship, a sleek chrome relic with chipped paint and hand-drawn decals of smiling cats, drifted into the orbital slot with no security clearance. It didn't ask. It just parked. Silas exited in a beige coat, black gloves, and cowboy boots with tiny metal stars on the sides. The airlock doors didn't quite close behind him, and the ship's AI played Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues on loop for 17 minutes before someone muted it. He walked into the grand court with a paper cup of coffee. No datapad. No bodyguards. Just a calm gait and a slight limp. Silas Gray, human ambassador. Sorry I'm late. Had to check on my mother's garden back home. He offered a soft smile. Tomatoes are a temperamental species, much like empires. The king raised an amused brow. You come to offer Earth's grievance. Silas took a slow sip, looking around. Grievance, sire? No, I came to express thanks. That made the room blink. Thanks. He nodded. You've given us clarity, a rare gift in politics. The king, uncertain whether to laugh or snarl, settled for smiling indulgently. I presume you mean to offer terms. For peace. Silas set the cup on a floating tray. Humanity's peace isn't a thing we offer. It's something we grant. A few alien delegates shifted in their seats. I've studied your history, Your Majesty, Silas continued, walking slowly around the dais. You rule by fear. Execution, spectacle, intimidation. Effective tactics, if your subjects are afraid of dying. He turned. We're not. The king narrowed his eyes. You speak boldly. I speak plainly, Silas said, shrugging. We're a plain kind of people. We like jokes, coffee, tailgate barbecues, and we hold grudges like sacred scrolls. A laughter rippled among the lesser council. One insectoid clacked. The humans posture again. Their women were punished, and they do nothing but talk. Silas turned to him. Funny. You mistake restraint for passivity. It's not that we won't strike. It's that we haven't yet. He smiled wider. But don't worry. When we do, you'll know. Because you won't see it coming, or see much of anything after. The court quieted. Even the king tapped his fingers slower. Then what is it you want, human? He said, voice now laced with something smaller than rage. Unease. Silas glanced at the 5 empty platforms. We want you to understand something, he said softly, before your translators scramble this too much. Those women you hanged? They weren't just symbols. They were mothers, sisters, engineers. One taught chess at a refugee station. One coded the gravity stabilizers on Earth's moon colonies. Another sang lullabies that became viral therapy for autistic children. You hanged hope. You hanged warmth. And in doing so, you flipped a switch. He leaned in. And humans are very good with switches. Outside in orbit, a ship called Delilah's Mercy began transmitting impulses. Coded images of ancient Earth vengeance. Pompeii's ash. Dresden's ruins. A mushroom cloud rising over sand. The king's aide flinched. What are those? Memories, Silas replied without looking. Souvenirs of what we do when pushed too far. The aide whispered something to the king. Silas stepped back. But don't let me take up more of your time, he said, tapping his wristband. I know you're busy, executing dreams and all. He turned to leave, paused, then added, oh, and about those briefcases we sent to the Andari, the Fex, and the Telvan councils? The king stiffened. They're not bombs. Yet. He left. The court remained frozen for nearly a minute before resuming movement. And even then, nothing felt quite right. Back in his ship, Silas sat in the dim control room and looked at a screen displaying 5 faces. Those women again, frozen mid-breath. Forgive us for taking so long, he murmured. The ship whispered. Protocol Widowmaker activated. Not yet, he said. Let them dance a while. The AI chuckled. Would you like music? Play something for them, Silas said. Something from Earth. Something slow. As the Delilah's Mercy drifted from orbit, Earth's systems went dark. All of them. Entire communication lines across the galactic web shimmered, flickered, and vanished. It was the quiet before a storm no one had heard of. At the edge of the empire, a single border outpost blinked out of existence. The cause, unknown. Back in the Grand Court, the king stared at the floating display, now glitching. His reflection rippled across it, warped, distorted. And just faintly, from the black glass, came the ghost of a lullaby in a human child's voice. There was no formal declaration, no war drums, no missile launches or demands scrawled across starlit skies. There was only absence. Earth pulled back, slowly, like a hand retreating from a handshake. Not in anger, just quiet detachment. Delegates withdrew. Treaties lapsed. Shipping lanes diverted under the guise of cosmic radiation drift. And still, no direct threats. No rattling sabers. Only that eerie, unbothered silence. Silas Gray returned to the court a week later with a pie. Real crust. Cinnamon dusted top. Apple, from what he claimed was his mother's tree on the Appalachian shelf. The ambassador carried it through customs with no clearance, waved cheerfully at border drones, and presented it personally to the Galactic King. Thought you'd enjoy a taste of home, he said, laying the pie on a hovering tray like a relic. The king looked at it as one might regard an unfamiliar creature, charmed but suspicious. You mock us with desserts, he asked, tilting his crowned head. Silas gave a slow shrug. Mockery is such a sharp word, Your Majesty. I prefer a gesture of goodwill baked at 375 degrees. He smiled. The court didn't. Did you know, Silas continued, drawing a folded piece of paper from his coat, that this recipe was passed down from one of the executed women? She used to bake it for refugee kids on Europa. Taught a little cooking class too. You know, something to make the orphans laugh. He unfolded the recipe slowly. I laminated it. The king remained still. No expression. But the eight to his left, a younger diplomat from the Kralin cluster, shifted uncomfortably. "We understand grief, Ambassador," the king said coldly. "But Earth must accept that its actions carry consequences. The women violated protocol." Silas nodded thoughtfully. "And the Empire must accept that Earth doesn't forget. Especially not kindness. Especially not when it's strangled." The court watched, stunned by the shift. How warmth from his tone never quite left, even when his words did. "May I ask," Silas said after a pause, "if you've read any Terran literature? Mythology, perhaps?" The king blinked. "Some. There's a common thread," Silas said, folding his hands behind his back. "We don't worship gods because they're good. We fear them because they're patient." The room grew colder. Elsewhere, across the galactic net, little glitches began to surface. Terran Educational Archives suddenly requested access clearance on a dozen systems. Old Earth ballads began auto-playing on entertainment streams, bleeding through alien media feeds with ghostly echo. One song, an old folk tune sung by children, had no lyrics, only hums and minor chords. No one could turn it off. On the Andari homeworld, a holographic monument appeared overnight. 5 women carved in light, holding tools, not weapons, and one holding a child. It bore no claim of authorship. When asked, Silas said, "We like to remember what we lose. Some build graves. We build reminders." The king held a private audience that same day. With him sat 12 leaders of key systems. Their conversation was quiet, urgent. "They're doing something," muttered the chancellor of the Vexer Sons. "Pulling data. Redirecting fleets. Sending encrypted transmissions to minor species." "They haven't fired a shot," the king growled. "They don't need to," said Elder Dravok, the only being in the room older than the throne itself. The pale, robed figure leaned forward. "I have watched humanity for 3 centuries. They don't shout when wounded. They seethe. And when they act, it is with purpose. They are the only race that learned war as a ritual and vengeance as a sacrament." One of the generals snorted. "What could Earth possibly do? We outnumber them, outgun them, outrank them. Outguess them." Dravok interrupted, eyes narrowing. No one spoke. The king waved a hand dismissively. "They are dramatic, poetic, but still primitives with fragile bodies." Dravok folded his long fingers. "You hang their poets." Silas returned the next morning with flowers. A single white rose, frozen in crystalline shell, genetically preserved to last 100 years. He placed it at the foot of the royal dais and said nothing. The king stared at it. Silas bowed slightly and walked away. Later, when questioned, he replied, "A memorial. Every empire deserves one." That evening, Earth's minor trade deals dissolved across 72 systems. No statement, just silent closures. And then came the briefcases, each one identical, each hand-delivered by Terran envoys to races long ignored by the Empire. The scavenging Telvin, the frostborn Emorar, the elusive Hexari. The contents? Unknown. One Telvin diplomat opened hers and immediately defected from the Galactic Council. She wept for 2 hours and kissed the envoy's shoes. "They saw us," she whispered. "They remembered us." The king began to worry. Silas appeared again, this time not with gifts. He stood at the center of the court and produced a datapad. It displayed nothing but a map, an old Earth star chart. Hand-drawn, sepia-toned. Lines etched with ink, not pixels. "This," he said, "is from our past. When we were still small. Still afraid. It's a record of wars fought over rivers, hills, ideas, women." He paused. "We won't fight you over planets, or minerals, or ideology." He looked up. "We're going to fight you over memory." One of the insectoid senators laughed. "How do you win a war with memory?" Silas gave the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "By making sure you remember the loss. Back on Earth, factories powered up. Not munitions plants. Not battle cruisers. No, Earth's AI printers began producing books. Millions of them. Each one telling the life story of the 5 executed women, translated into 700 languages. shipped through diplomatic channels, dropped on doorsteps, slipped into schools. The titles were simple. She was someone. A MYR warlord cried reading one. He left his military post the next morning. In the following days, whispers spread across the empire. Of songs played by broken drones, of lullabies left in comm stations, of strange new stars blinking in deliberate patterns. Dravok came before the king once more. "They've already begun," he said quietly. "We just haven't caught up." "What is their goal?" the king snapped. "To haunt you," Dravok replied. "Forever." The king turned to Silas during the next court session, voice tight. "If Earth continues to undermine the peace, we will respond with military action." Silas blinked. "Peace." He tilted his head. "Your Majesty, with all due respect, you executed 5 unarmed women and called it diplomacy. They defied galactic law." Silas looked around the room. Faces of senators and nobles and conquerors. "Once upon a time," he said softly, "a few women in a forgotten town defied a king. They tossed tea in a harbor, stitched flags in candlelight, and sang through cannon fire. The king didn't see them as a threat either." He turned to leave. But history did. That night, the lights in the royal palace flickered. Only once. No damage. But the engineers could never trace the source. In the vastness of space, a human stealth vessel slipped past 5 Imperial scanners undetected. It did not fire. It simply left behind a data sphere with one recorded message. Silas' voice. "You've mistaken mercy for fear, and silence for surrender. But you will learn, as all tyrants do." He paused, then spoke gently. "We are not the kind of species that cries for long. We're the kind that gets very, very quiet, right before we rewrite the ending." Aboard the Delilah's Mercy, Silas stood by the window, watching as 3 Empire-controlled star relays began blinking in unnatural rhythms. "What do you think they'll do next?" his AI asked. "Dismiss us. Again. And that's good." "Why?" "Because people who dismiss you rarely see the knife." The AI paused. "Protocol Widowmaker." Silas exhaled slowly. "Soon. First, let them remember what it felt like to laugh in our presence." On the Galactic King's desk, where the rose once sat, now bloomed 5 new ones, uncut, untouched, unasked for. Each pure white. Each in silent bloom. And no one knew how they'd gotten there. The Telvan ambassador arrived at the Emergency Galactic Council sobbing. She wasn't injured. Not poisoned. Just crying loud, wet, undignified sobs that echoed against the crystalline walls. She clutched a small leather-bound book, shaking too hard to speak, and dropped it on the floor before the assembled leaders. It slid open to a worn page. She braided her daughter's hair each morning even after the diagnosis. Told stories about suns that never set. Her name was Miriam. The silence that followed her breakdown was worse than screaming. It lasted too long. Someone finally whispered, What did they give you?" The ambassador turned, eyes wild. "A reason." She collapsed. They called the emergency summit that same night, with all major systems dialing in via holo. Some, like the Vexor sons, refused to attend. Others, like the MYR and Hexari, joined without speaking. The tension inside the chamber was a thick, metallic fog. The king arrived late, voice thunderous. "This has gone far enough. Earth poisons the heart of our council. They disseminate propaganda, collapse treaties with grief. They wage sentiment like war." He slammed a clawed hand on the armrest. "Where are their ships? Where are their armies?" No one answered, because none had seen Earth's fleet. Only the results. The Outer Reach listening post at Sector V, 88, stopped broadcasting. The crew was found a week later, alive, unharmed, but changed. The log showed looping audio files from an old Earth woman's voice reading bedtime stories over soft violin. Their commander wrote in his final entry, "We forgot that sorrow is a weapon." Earth remembered. The king demanded retaliation. Immediate. Swift. "We burned their colonies," he declared. "Torched their moonports. Stripped their orbitals to dust." But something flickered on the holo feed before he finished. Not interference. Not sabotage. A message. No encryption. Just 5 words. White font. Black background. This is Operation Widowmaker. And then it began. First, the songs. Simple melodies leaked into imperial comms, music boxes and gospel choirs and children's playground chants. No lyrics. Just memory-laced vibrations designed to trigger emotional spikes in non-human species. Some laughed it off. Others didn't. Entire security divisions froze mid-task. An Andari elite squad broke formation when they heard the notes. One shot himself in the foot to drown it out. One cried, whispering his mother's name, though he'd never met her. Next came the displacements. Imperial star charts updated themselves overnight. Trade routes disappeared. Entire shipping stations were relocated, physically moved, without any reported engine signatures. Galactic GPS showed locations blinking 4 light-years to the left. No one knew how. And then the flood of human literature. Tens of thousands of holonovels, poems, children's books, and war diaries poured across the network. Every file marked with a simple title. She was someone. Translated, illustrated, annotated with footnotes from human children. One file included a crayon drawing of a stick-figure woman with curly hair. Caption: My mom before the bad people hanged her. Alien leaders tried deleting the files. They came back. In different formats. In different languages. On every screen. Some began to suspect the truth. It's not war, whispered the MWRR elder. It's grief weaponized. Inside Earth's command bunker, codenamed Delilah's Mercy, Silas Gray stood before a giant holomap of the galaxy, slowly rotating. He wore the same beige coat, though its sleeves now bore 5 hand-stitched patches, one for each woman. You're broadcasting lullabies, said his second-in-command, a young cyber-strategist named Rhea, her voice both reverent and disturbed. They're hitting military bandwidth, even encrypted lines. The MYRR are hallucinating maternal figures. Silas didn't turn. Good. Grief speaks loudest when sung by ghosts. She hesitated. Sir, is there a fleet? No. A virus? A bioweapon? He looked at her. Just memory. She shivered. At that moment, an entire armada, the Empire's 3rd Peacekeeping Division, was found adrift in a spiral drift outside the Telvin Nebula. No damage. No signals. The crews were alive, but catatonic. Investigators found one phrase scrawled into the walls of every command bridge. We hung 5 women, but we never buried them. Back in the Empire, panic began to stir. Alien merchants fled trade hubs. Colonies started forming militias against Earth, yes, but also against the Empire for provoking ancestral wrath. Political structures strained. Governors resigned. The king called an emergency closed-door session with his generals. They're not fighting us, he hissed, pacing. They're unmaking us. General Arvok, one of his oldest loyalists, clenched his jaw. Permission to mobilize atmospheric purges. Burn their outposts to ash. No, Dravok said softly from the corner. You don't understand. All heads turned. Dravok's eyes were full of something very old. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. I told you. They don't kill with guns. They kill with lessons. He paused. They don't just want to win. They want us to remember losing. Across the galaxy, tiny things kept happening. A fleet supply code changed one letter. A communications satellite played a woman humming. A diplomatic conference began with a smell of cinnamon filling the room. No one knew why. Some cried. Some screamed. The MYRR defected. Then the Telvin. Then the Hexari. All citing one reason. We were seen. The king tried once more. Desperate. Cornered. He addressed the galactic net. This manipulation will not stand. We executed traitors, not martyrs. Earth's silence is deception. He slammed his fist. Show your true face, humans. He got a reply. A single audio file. The voice was soft. Female. Unmistakably human. Once I was just a mother. I raised 2 girls. I liked daisies and lemon tea. I asked to live free. You hanged me. A pause. Now my voice sings through 1,000 stars. And every lullaby I left is the blade at your throat. The feed cut. The court chamber cracked. Some cried. Some fled. Dravok whispered, they never wanted war. They wanted a graveyard where your name used to be. Inside Delilah's mercy, Silas closed the channel and looked at the 5 roses blooming in the center console. One had begun to rot, on purpose. A reminder. Rhea approached. Sir, they're asking if this is retaliation. Silas exhaled. No. He walked slowly to the viewport. This is preservation. She frowned. Of what? Silas's voice dropped. Of decency. Of memory. Of consequence. If you hang hope, we hang history around your neck. Forever. She nodded slowly. And if they retaliate? He glanced at her. Then we'll sing louder. Later that day, the Galactic Senate officially recognized Operation Widowmaker as an existential threat. And that night, in the king's palace, the lights flickered again. A box sat in his private chamber. He hadn't heard anyone enter. Inside, 5 earth teacups. Porcelain. Hand-painted. One had a crack sealed in gold leaf. Beneath them, a single folded note. In Silas's handwriting. You hanged 5 women, but you forgot what they built. As the king reached to crush the porcelain in rage, one of the cups sang, just softly, just once, a mother's voice humming over the rim, and somewhere in the palace walls, 5 more voices joined her. The empire was breaking. Not from missiles. Not from riots. Not from any familiar kind of war. It was fraying from within. Entire star systems fell into silence. Not conquered. Not destroyed. Just gone. Their archives rewritten, cultural centers filled with Terran voices, the air vibrating with lullabies in unfamiliar tones. Memory became invasion, and with memory came collapse. The Galactic King sat alone in his war chamber, fingers twitching as the lights dimmed again. It wasn't technical failure. He knew that now. This was Earth's doing. Always subtle, always precise, like a poem with knives hidden in the rhyme. Behind him, the imperial banners had begun to rot at the edges. Not literally, he wasn't insane. But somehow, the colors had dulled. The gold had tarnished. The fabric looked tired. There were fewer aides now. Most had defected. A few had taken their own lives. One had walked into the throne room, placed a copy of She Was Someone on the steps, and shot himself without a word. The generals were worse. They argued, barked, turned on each other like wounded dogs. They kept demanding Earth be bombed into the Stone Age. But Earth had already moved past stone, past iron, past fire. It had mastered something else entirely. We're not fighting flesh, whispered Elder Dravok, now a permanent presence at the king's side. We're fighting ghosts. The king stared blankly at the data stream. 1,000 blinking red zones. Systems compromised not by invasion, but by despair. Economies buckled from within. Families stopped reporting births. Cultures abandoned mythologies overnight. One planet outlawed the term justice. Another banned executions entirely, citing fear of haunting. They're undoing our beliefs, the king muttered. Not our weapons. Our meaning. No survivors, said Dravok quietly. Not of the body, of the mind. At the heart of it all, Earth remained quiet. Not a single official broadcast. Not one war declaration. Just the constant spread of names, faces, memories. And something else. A presence. Reports came from the Telvan border. Ships spotting a single vessel, not attacking, just watching. A sleek silhouette against the stars, wrapped in artificial shadow. It never fired. It never ran. It simply transmitted 5 frequencies, each one corresponding to the brainwave pattern of one of the executed women. The signal wasn't audible, but those who got too close, they dreamed. One Vexor commander ripped off his own face after 3 nights, screamed that he saw a woman with a broken voice humming in a cradle of stars. She'd asked him, "Do you remember what you did?" Earth called it Project Echo. The king called it sacrilege. And yet, he never moved against it. He couldn't. Because every weapon system aimed at the ghost ship glitched. Every targeting array failed. And every time he gave the command, his mouth dried. His pulse slowed. A fragment of song crept into the room. Earth didn't need shields. It had grief. Silas Gray hadn't been seen in weeks. His last transmission was brief, delivered directly to the king's desk, encoded in a bouquet of wilting roses. It contained only one sentence. You may still be breathing, but you've already stopped existing. That night, the king walked through the imperial halls in solitude. No guards, no aides, just soft footsteps echoing down stone corridors. He passed the Hall of Ancients, empty, statues covered with sheets. He passed the Fountain of Triumph, drained dry. He paused before the War Mural, an epic painting of galactic conquest. His face was once central in the image, triumphant atop a mountain of skulls. Now, a strange distortion had warped the paint. The mountain remained, but the skulls had names, Earth names, etched softly into the brushstrokes in Terran script. He stepped back, but the wall loomed closer. Lena Hart, Jocelyn Ng, Miriam Kasari, Ruth Halder, Camille Bourdieu, the names of the 5 women he'd hanged. Not one citizen remembered why anymore. They only remembered who. His knees buckled. He didn't fall. Not yet. The throne room was silent when he returned. Dravok remained seated, eyes closed, almost meditating. They've made you into a cautionary tale, the elder murmured. You're no longer a ruler. You're a memory of what not to become. I still rule, the king snapped. I still command 1,000 fleets. But none obey, Dravok said gently, because they're already mourning you. Outside, the stars flickered, and one blinked off. Not exploded, not destroyed, just off. The king stood, voice trembling. What do they want? He turned to Dravok. They've won. They've broken us. Why haven't they stopped? Dravok opened his eyes slowly. Because Earth doesn't fight to win. It fights to teach. They want to scar the galaxy so deeply, no empire will dare raise a noose again. He pointed to the empty dais. They're building a myth. Out of blood. Out of lullabies. And it's working. Then a sound. Soft. Metallic. Footsteps. From nowhere. The throne room doors opened. No guards, no announcement. And Silas Gray walked in. His coat looked heavier now. His gloves darker. The 5 stars stitched to his sleeves shimmered faintly. He didn't smile. Didn't bow. He just stood there, looking at the king. You came, the monarch whispered. To gloat. No, Silas said. To give you a choice. The room held its breath. You can abdicate, Silas said quietly. Not from the throne. From memory. Step down. Let your name fade. Let us write the truth. The king spat. And if I refuse? Silas stepped closer. His eyes were clear. Then you won't be remembered at all. A pause. And then he reached into his coat and placed something on the ground. A music box. Old. Wooden. Carved with a mother holding a child. He turned the crank. The melody that played wasn't familiar, but it felt ancient. A song sung at graves. At cradles. A Terran lullaby. As it played, holograms bloomed from its center. The 5 women. Not dying. Not bound. Living. Laughing. Teaching. Dancing with children. Tinkering with machines. Writing poetry. Planting gardens. 5 lives, restored in light. You thought killing them ended them, Silas said, voice breaking ever so slightly. But all it did was make the universe see them. The king fell to his knees. The song slowed. The women faded. And Silas left. No guard stopped him. No guns fired. No alarm sounded. There was nothing left to protect. That evening, across every imperial channel, Earth transmitted one final message. No voice. No video. Just text. You hanged 5 women. We hung your future beside them. Then Earth went dark again. Silas returned to Delilah's mercy, his coat wet from planetary rain. Inside, the ship's AI greeted him with static-tinged warmth. Did he choose remembrance? Silas shook his head. No. He looked out at the stars. Then the galaxy will remember for him. The AI paused. Shall I conclude Operation Widowmaker? Silas didn't answer at first. He just placed a music box on the console and wound it once more. The melody played, and 5 new lights lit up on the ship's side, each named after one of the women. No survivors, Silas whispered. Because no one survives what they forget. Back on the throne world, as night fell, something bloomed in the palace gardens. 5 white roses. No soil. No gardener. Just memory. And as the galaxy turned, forever changed, a human child somewhere on a colony moon opened a book titled She Was Someone. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, an empire fell not to force, but to mourning.